Hello, this is Jim here again from Jim Lunch Codes. Today I'm really excited because we're coding in Clojure, doing the Bob challenge from exorcism.io. So let's get into it. Okay, so here we are on exorcism.io in the Clojure track. This question is called Bob. And basically it's a question that asks you to make a function that takes a string, something that you would say to Bob, and it returns the string of what Bob would respond. So down here we can see the command to download this locally because exorcism.io is so nice. So I'll just paste this in here and you can see that it was copied into this folder. I'll just copy the whole thing and go into it. And now, so we open this project and we see bob.clj. This is the file that we're supposed to work in. This is just an empty function called response4 in the namespace Bob. Let's also open up our test file and let me just say split down so that we can have both of these open here. And these are our tests. So let me just, to make this a little simpler, easier to work with, let me just comment all of these tests except the first one. So this is the final Bob responds whatever. So to anything else, he responds whatever. So just stepping back for a second, this is sort of like a switch case type thing in OOP languages, and in Clojure I would really think to go with cond here, like conditional. In this condition do this, in this condition do that, and then we have the else for whatever. So let's just do that, and just to show you guys that it's okay to Google things and how to Google things, I'm just going to search cond Clojure, and this will kind of teach us how to use it. So looking at the examples here, we say the function cond, and then it takes an expression. If that returns true, then then we return something, right? Evaluates this thing. And then if this expression is true, then we return this. Otherwise, we just return the first argument of this else. So it seems pretty straightforward, somewhat. So let's just say cond, and I'm not sure if you can just say else and not even have any. Let me just do it without this, just so you guys can see failing tests. So because this is a Clojure project, they are using Linigan, popular Clojure command line tool. And so if you look at the README, it should say, okay, it doesn't say. I mean, you use line test to run this project. Yeah, I guess you just need to work with other exorcism Clojure project or problems to know that line tests, basically they're all using line again, and you just say line test to run it. And so we had a failure here, and the failure was wrong number of args passed to Bob response 4. So right, if we look at our test for a second, we're checking if we're saying, is this expression true, basically? And this expression is whatever, the string whatever dot equal to the result of this function call Bob response 4. And we're just passing in this weird string tomato period. And so this should return whatever. So the problem is that we are not taking any parameters here. We need to add this vector up here, and I'll name the parameter s. Whoops, this is my test. Don't want to add it there. Let's go back to Bob. Right, so this is just empty vector, which is saying, hey, we're not taking any parameters. So throw an s in there to call the parameter string. Notice I have CLJ condo in here, linting for Clojure, telling me that I added this variable and didn't even use it. So thanks for that, little yellow squiggles. And so what are we gonna do now? Let's run this again. Okay, so we have a test failure now, and we can see that whatever dot was not equal to whatever without the dot. So that's cool, that's what I was expecting. So now let's add the dot in so that it's exactly correct. And this should pass now. So we ran our test, we got 0 failures, and that's good. Now let's check out this test. Responds to shouts. So basically we need to check if the string is all uppercase. So a idiomatic way to name functions in Clojure that either respond to true or false is just to name them with ending with a question mark. So this in the back in the question they describe this as yelled, things that are yelled at Bob. So I think we're going to name this function yelled question mark, and it'll take a string, and if something is yelled, then Bob will always respond with this string. And of course it's telling me, hey, I don't know what this is, yelled, because I didn't define this function yet. So let me just do it up here. This will also take a string. And there's a few different ways to check if something is uppercase. We could Google that again the same way, but I'm just going to cheat and tell you guys that we can use, so we're bringing in Clojure.string here, really popular library, especially when you're working with strings. And I'm just going to call this str for when we reference it later. And okay, so there's a really simple function called uppercase in the string library. I'm going to apply that on S, and say if S is equal to the all uppercase version of it, then we want to return true. Otherwise, we will return false here. And so, let's give this a go. Yay. So 0 failures, that passed, and we're responding to shouts. So we can respond to gibberish shouts. This should be fine, yep. And now we need to respond to questions. So, basically a question, for all intents and purposes in this problem is just a string where the last character is a question mark. So, this definitely should fail because we didn't handle this at all. So, I'm going to make another, I kind of like this, this way of solving this problem where have a function that checks on this condition and then returns Bob response if it's that type of message that you're saying to him. So I'm going to say question S, and Bob's response to questions is always sure. I'm going to define this function question. It also takes a string. And now, okay, so we can say last S. That will get the last. And let me just to show you that we can just print things. Maybe I'll say last is, and then the value here, last S, just to it's like sanity check. Just return false zeros. Let's run these. And we did get a failure, but we can see that the last is question mark here, last is dot here, and those correspond to this character and this character. Right, so the ones where it evaluated yelled to true, then it didn't even go into this function question. So that's why we're only logging those two things. But last is working as I expected. It just takes the last character, so that's nice. So let's say if last is equal to backslash, question mark means question mark character in Clojure. So nice that we have that distinction between characters and just single character strings. I'm going to delete this print since I know that it's working now. And, well, probably should have ran the test before I start deleting things, but cool, we can see that it's passing now. So let's start uncommenting some more of these tests. This one is another question. gibberish question. Shouldn't really make a difference to our function. We just make a little more room here. Forceful talking. I'm just going to close this so that we have some more room to read these tests. Forceful talking, he should say whatever. Respond to acronyms. And so, okay, cool. So we have a failed test now. So basically, if it's all caps and it ends in a question mark, then we have a new response from Bob. He should say, calm down, I know what I'm doing. Exclamation point. Okay, so I basically want this to be checked before yelled and question because these will both evaluate to true. So I'm just going to make a function called yelled question. Pass this in the string. Let's fix up this paren. And make a function called yelled question. This one's also returning a boolean, so I'm just going to end it in a question mark. Takes a string, we'll call it S. And really, this is just going to be if it's a question and it's yelled. So this is the beautiful composability of Clojure and just functional programming in general, that we can just do this. And now yelled questions should return the yelled question string. So let's test this. Yay, it's passing. So, shouting some numbers. Passing. Responds to no letters. Okay, so this is interesting. We have a failure here. And the expected response was whatever. But our function returned, whoa, chill out. And so, whoa, chill out is the response from yelled. So it looks like this 1, 2, 3 returned true with yelled. And if we look at this function, actually, it makes sense because all this is doing is comparing the string to the uppercase version of it. So 1, 2, 3 won't really change when you uppercase it. So there's a few different ways we can solve this. I think what I'm going to do is basically check that the string has alphanumeric characters, A through Z, either lowercase or uppercase. So I'm going to say and say that this has to be true. And using refind, this is kind of a built-in regex find function in Clojure. And then we're going to pass it this somewhat funky regex expression. And this is just lowercase a to z, capital A to Z, pretty straightforward. We're finding that in S. And so this will, it will return some things, not necessarily true, but the point is that we just wanted to return true overall, this function overall. and as long as it's not nil, then we'll satisfy this and so hopefully this will make our test pass. And that did not seem to work. Okay, well, turns out I had just not realized that I didn't save the file, but it does work. And this is our yelled function now. We're using that refine, check if it's uppercase. And so it works for all caps inputs, but it only considers it a yelled string if it contains at least one alphabetic character, lowercase or uppercase. Well, I guess it has to be uppercase. So in that case, maybe I should only do this, since we don't need to check for those lower cases. And let's continue running tests and see if we're missing anything. The zombies responds statement containing a question mark, but not at the end. Should be fine. Non-letters question should be fine. Not sure what is the difference in this one, but okay. Okay, so now we have the responding to silence ones. These I didn't do at all. So this test is failing, makes sense. And so going back to the question, if you address him without actually saying anything, then he says fine, be that way. And it's interesting because what does that even mean without saying anything? And the beauty of test-driven development is that it's specified what they mean in the tests here. So if we say empty string, that counts as saying nothing. If we say a bunch of spaces, that counts as saying nothing. If we say just a bunch of tab characters, that counts as saying nothing. And so let's check for this. Maybe I'll call this function nothing. If it's nothing, then we're going to respond fine, be that way. And let's define a function for nothing. And so here, let's think about what we have. So there is on string, there is string.trim that we can use. Not totally sure if stir we called it, .trim. Not totally sure if this is going to do exactly what we want, but we can try it and see what's passing and failing. So we have string.trim here, and we're trimming the string. We basically want to say if we trimmed everything, and this is just equal to the empty string, then let's do that. Let's run our test sys, and they're all passing, so we did it. But we're not done yet. We still have a few tests left. Battery's dying, but we're still going. So let's run this test. Passing. Test with some more white space. Passing. Oh, interesting. Okay, so we have another failed test here. So the expected response is sure, but our function returned whatever. And he passed in, okay, if I like my space bar quite a bit with some empty space. Interesting. So it should have responded sure as a question. Okay, so question is just looking for the last character, which in this case is a space. So according to these tests, it seems like they want us to trim the string first before we check if it's a question. So I could just trim it here. I could maybe, and actually this, here. Let me do string.trim here just to show you that also the yelled needs to be trimmed as well. Oh, did I not do this? So, missing a pen here. Okay, so this works for this test, but now we have a yelled one that needs to be, okay. I guess that doesn't matter then. I don't know if I like this duplication of the trimmed string there. I could maybe make a let where I say trim S. Don't want this print here, I want it in the end here. Just pass trimmed in everywhere. And then we can take it out here, simplify that a little bit. Move everything over. And so let's make sure everything passes still. 7 failures. Okay. That was not good. I need to do this. So, it's responding fine B that way a lot. If equals this S, of course. That was a close one. And here we go. Here we go. Last one. Statement ending in white space. Cool. So now we have all 25 tests passing. We did uncomment all of them. Yes, we did. So let me just close this for a second. Take a look at our function. Do I want to do anything, any last cleanup. This, sometimes we can go through and say maybe what are some things that we can use the threading macro instead of having it be like super nested. So for here, for example, we could do s thread last, and we're going to throw this in, the last function. Pretty funny. And we're going to say if it's equal to this question mark character. And so now we don't need this anymore. So possibly slightly cleaner depending on your preference. And anything else? Maybe, let's see, could add a doc string here maybe. I'll say maybe paste some text and returns the response of Bob. Okay. One of my favorite things coming from TypeScript is to throw in these pre and post conditions here. So this is going to take a string, this function, and it returns a string also. And this is the return value, so just a way of being able to specify that even when you're in the dynamic language of Clojure. So there's no reason to say anything bad about Clojure. Super beautiful language. This should be S. Yeah, so we have, maybe we can just make these private functions here. Response 4 we want to be called by our outside methods. So there's that one. And test. Yep. And so I think this is working pretty good, guys. And so to submit this, we can just say exorcism submit source Bob CLJ. So, hope you found this video interesting. I guess that's all there is. So, that's the Bob challenge in Clojure. Hope you enjoyed it and are inspired to code more Clojure. See you next time. Bye.